Hello everybody, this is Jaime Lammers again. I am a licensed professional counselor, a gender specialist, and a transgender individual, and I've been talking about transgender topics for everybody. And today I wanted to talk to everybody about the idea of the history of the models of affirmative transgender therapy and medical affirmation, basically, that has been going on, because it's very important to understand these models, to understand when you're looking for help and looking for people who can help you, where they are standing in the whole progression of the whole idea of affirmative transgender healthcare and therapy. So, whenever I talk to someone about that history of the care for transgender individuals, I always break it down into the idea of there's four basic models. Of course, they blend into each other, they change from one to the other, but there are four basic points that in the progression up to now for transgender healthcare and transgender therapy. The start of the whole model is starting out with the illegal model. The illegal model had occurred during the colonization period. It was made to, because people are feeling that you shouldn't be acting in ways that weren't appropriate, in quotes, for the time. And so people who are wearing clothing from what was considered at the time the opposite sex could be arrested. If you were assigned male at birth, if you were wearing female clothing, you could be arrested for it. And this is why I term this the illegal model. This had been occurring, though, all the way up into the 70s and 80s. There are some places that it was still illegal to wear the clothing that you weren't assigned to at birth until about the 70s or 80s at the very least. And there's some that even after that. I mean, it's like I said, it's always this progression thing, it's always this phasing from one to another. But it's been occurring, and so there's people still who remember that, if you will. And then there's the gatekeeping model. The gatekeeping model is kind of like where Harry Benjamin's standards of care and things like that were occurring, and it was trying to help people be more affirmed as transgender individuals. The problem is that it was seen very poorly as a mental illness at that time. And so it was believed that we had to make sure, absolutely sure, that this person is transgender. Otherwise, we are going to so screw them up. If they're already screwed up, then they're going to need the help. And that's a terrible way of thinking, of course. And it also is a gatekeeping and a hazing model. It's basically people were expecting you to jump through these hoops and do the exact thing. I mean, back in the gatekeeping model, the idea was you had to uproot yourself. You had to divorce, you had to leave your kids, leave your family, change your name, go to a new area, become this whole new person. Otherwise, you couldn't become affirmed, and you had to go through a hazing ritual. You had to go for quite a long time living very strongly in the gender that you are affirmed in, and making sure that everybody treated you properly before you were even given anything like hormones or surgeries or anything. And it was taught that you should feel disgraced about this. This is why it's such a terrible thing. The gatekeeping model, though it's great that people were able to get care, is terrible compared to the illegal model. Not terrible for illegal, terrible for today's model. I mean, it's better than the illegal model, but it's terrible for overall. Now, moving on, you have then what I tend to call the WPATH model. WPATH model is World Professional Association of Transgender Healthcare, and they, of course, have standards of care. They're up to standards version 7 as the making of this video. And this one, there's less hazing, less gatekeeping. They still require quite a few things, some hoop jumping and things, letters of recommendation, making sure that a person has lived long enough in their affirmed gender in order to get surgeries and things like that. But it's a lot less, and it's a lot more affirming, and it's a lot more accepting. And they're trying to get away from the idea that being transgender is a mental illness, which it isn't, of course. And so this model, of course, is helped a lot. It's made it so that people are starting to be more accepting and more opening, but there's still some of that gatekeeping, some of that hazing, some of that discrimination going on within this model, which is why the current model is the informed consent model, or sometimes called ICATH, Informed Consent Access to Transgender Healthcare. And the ICATH model it gives the person the ability to make their own decisions about themselves. It's basically, you make sure they have all the information. They make sure that they know all the information. They understand all the information. And then you sit back and say, what is it that you need in order to feel good about yourself? And then you give that to them. They fully know what the decisions they're making, what the ramifications are. And part of what the therapist has to do is make sure that the person is able to give informed consent, that they do not have mental illnesses or things getting in the way of being able to understand and make decisions for themselves. And if they can, great, then let them do what they need to do. It is they Nobody else can see gender identity. Gender identity is the sex of the mind. It's what the sex is, your biological sex, when inside your head, basically, instead of inside your body. And so nobody else knows it. We have to accept what somebody else tells us when it comes to gender identity, and that's why it's so important for the ICAF model. And of course, there's problems. Yes, every model has their problems. ICAF model makes it so that some people may not fully understand what they want at the time. Hopefully, that's something that we can encourage people to take into consideration, but some people will get impatient and may move forward before they fully realize what they want and tell everybody lies that say, oh yeah, I'm fine. And you have problems and everything like that, of course. And is there going to be a new model? I would assume sooner or later there'll be a new model. Everything evolves, and so there'll be a better model in some time. But for now, there's your path. So seek out your healthcare providers and your therapists who actually understand the full transition of healthcare for transgender individuals and who fully understand where we are sitting nowadays in regards to all that. Thank you very much. If you want to connect with me, you can always reach out to the Psychology Today webpage. If you have any questions you would like me to answer, go ahead and leave questions on the comments below, and I will hopefully be able to answer them in future videos. All right, have a good one.